you, Kevin. Yeah, Portland Noir was my very first grown-up publication ever. So thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Powell's. I got some thank yous to say. I have to read everything. So, yes, I do want to say a few thank yous. I felt like I almost fell over. Don't lean. I feel like I could spend the entire event on my thank yous because a book is made by a community and so is a writer. But I want to keep things brief, and anyone who knows me knows that I can tend to go on. Thank you to everyone who's critiqued, advised, blurbed, promoted, or supported this book and me, including the Gong Show Writing Group, the Henry Writing Group, and the Dangerous Writers. Thank you to my family and so many friends, and I want to say thank you in particular to just a few folks. Steve Arndt, writer, poet, the official ambassador of the Portland writing community, and the reason so many of us are a part of it, including me. Stephen O'Donnell, love of my life. Who supports me, who makes me better. And of course, Laura Stanfield, the absolute publisher of my dreams. Better. When I decided to submit my novel to her and only her, I made the best decision in my book's life. And I want to have a little moment for some loved ones I've lost who I wish I could have with me now on this sweet, special day. My dad, my Aunt Kat, my friends Mara and Peg, my dog Nicholas, who if you look, you might find in these pages, Robert Hill, who was the first person I gave the manuscript to in full and who would have been the first person I read it to in full had fate not intervened. And Tom Spanbauer, my mentor, who taught me so much about writing and life, and without whom I'm sure I would not be up here now. I've been thinking about Tom all day, and I keep thinking that I'd like to think that he's in the ether, kind of plugged into this moment, and saying, dig me right now. Way to go, asshole. Finally, thank you to Margaret Malone, my conversation partner for tonight. Her book, People Like You, is one of my favorite story collections ever. You should get it if you don't have it already. And David Ian, the Foley artist, who's going to do a little accompaniment to my reading in just a second. In fact, get ready, David. If you want to come up and get ready, I'm going to read a little short bio for you, and then if you feel ready, you can read, yeah? Yeah, okay. David Ian has designed and performed sound effects in live stage productions in the Portland area for 25 years. Coming up, you can catch him performing his magic on October 17th with Tesla City Stories at the Old Church Concert Hall, and also October 30th with his wife in their original horror radio-themed production of Scary Home Companion, set in Lake Soul Begone. Now in its 6th year at the Victorian Bell Mansion. You can also check out his audio drama series, Dungeons and Damsels, on Spotify and other podcast platforms. David. Okay, you can take it away when ready.
We gonna do this?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Prologue. At 12 midnight, on the 11th of the month, as the tower bells chime, and the moon reflects 10,000 moons in the 10,000 windows of the city, chasing shadows across 9 dark storefronts along the square. Some certain moonbeam banks an 8-point ricochet, snaps a 7-second beeline to the 6-story building on 5th Street, where it shoots through a 4 by 3-foot ground-level window of 2-layer glass, straight to the basement floor, where one wide circle of blood is spreading out around the body of one man. One the gun. He has 1 minute to live. Chapter 1. I'm continuing. Chapter 1. The bells are still chiming as he opens his eyes, but now he is standing. This is strange. Strange enough that the walls to his left and right grab his ears and give a twist, trying to throw him back down onto the floor. One the gun shuts his eyes and tries to steady himself, listens to another strike of the bell, opens his eyes. The room stops spinning. She's standing in front of him. This is strange too, as she certainly wasn't here a moment ago. Such a look on her face, eyes the color and size of oceans. To the true blue. He doesn't understand the light in the room. It's bright as day, even as the midnight bells ring. He doesn't understand the room. This is not the basement. The troubled look on his assistant's face. She looks the way he feels. He sputters out the only thing he can think to say. Miss Blue? You look so odd just now, she says. Are you all right? Of course, he says, to shrug it off like a man, but actually, yes, truly, really, he's all right. He's not dead. Wasn't he just dead? About to be dead? To the True Blue has this radio show she listens to every Friday night and talks about constantly called Who is the Villain? A trite piece of schlock where the radio detective, one of those fakey detectives with nothing but brawn and clever quips, solves a different overblown case each week. The narrator's always saying ridiculous stuff like the dame had the kind of eyes that made you want to melt like honey on a hot biscuit. And the victim's always coming to in a hospital bed asking, where am I? Where am I? One the gun tries to know where he is so he doesn't have to ask this. He's not in the basement. He's in a room full of light. Blank white walls, a couple of windows. The open blinds shred the sunshine. And leave it in stripes on the floor. A couch and a chair, a beat-up old filing cabinet in the corner, bookcase and desk. He's in his office. One of the gun shakes his head. I just got a little dizzy all of a sudden. I'm fine. He needs to sit down. I think I'll just sit down. One of the gun sits down. He takes the couch where clients generally sit when they come to him to solve their very ordinary and un-radio-like cases, like, is my wife cheating on me, or is my clerk siphoning $20 a week from the company till? Sometimes he gets more interesting assignments, yes, sometimes even a murder. One of the gun is on a murder case right now. No, not his own murder. That's a different case altogether. In fact, it isn't a case at all. In fact, it didn't happen at all. He's pretty sure it didn't happen at all. Sir? To the True Blue's giving him the big blue eyes again. He kicks out a laugh to show her he's fine and not at all hallucinating his own death in the middle of the day. Don't mind me, it's just been, he thinks about it, a long morning. David. Let's have Margaret come up.
There's more foliage, right?
There's more foliage.
Okay. Yeah, more foliage.
Do you want to?
I want to, we're going to
Tell us
here
your-
and then,
Do you see what I'm saying?
should I,
Do you need to be near for later foliage?
later maybe, later maybe I will, yeah, maybe I should.
Okay.
I've done the podium?
Yep.
I've done the podium.
Do you-
Hi. Hi. I guess guess I'll sit next to him.
Hi.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
Gigi, that was so
Hi.
cool.
That's for you.
But I said hi to them.
Good, yeah, good. Hi.
So what you just experienced is what reading the book is like. Wasn't that remarkable? Book reading, that is Gigi. That is what this book is. Thank you so much. That was really wonderful. I'm so delighted to be here for many of the reasons other people have said already, but I've known Gigi a long time, and Gigi was already at the table when I came to the table of Dangerous Writers, and it is my profound honor to be here and be her gentle shepherd for this evening's questions. Okay, so I just want to ask, because there's so many writers in the room, the question I often ask, which is, how did you conceive this book? Because it's complicated if you're the writer. If you're the reader, it's just a joy. But how did you conceive of it? How did it come about in your brain?
It was 2002, I want to say. And I had this idea. I was really obsessed at the time with the book Ragtime by E.L. Doctorow, and I loved the fact that he had some characters. Some characters had real names, and then he had characters that were named like father, mother, mother's younger brother, and I thought, wow, you know. So I thought, what if I took that idea one step further with names that were numbers and corresponding rhymes, and so. Yeah, I mean, so it was March 25th, 2002. I was on the road with a circus between Buffalo, New York, and Columbus, Ohio. And I had this idea, and I was writing down frantically in a notebook because I knew that if we got there to the next town and I didn't write it down, it would be gone. So that's when it was born. And so, you know, the idea made me start with, you know, creating names, and the first one was one, the gun. And that seemed like an old-timey gumshoe to me. And then two, the True Blue, and so she must be his trusty assistant. And so numbers begat character, begat story, basically. Yeah.
Wow. So there was, when you had that idea, was the mystery element part of it? Like, I'm really curious about how that came to be, this genre marrying you in a book.
It's 1 and 2. There was an original book that kind of sucked, you know, because it was 2002. It was a long time ago, and I wrote it and I put it aside, and I came back to it like years and years later. But that original one was like 1 and 2 were in a mystery, and then 3 and 6 were in a different story, and then so there were like 4 different stories. But there was a mystery for that one little piece. I loved mystery novels when I was young.
That's what I'm curious about. This was like a comfortable genre for you.
Mm-hmm.
Was it one you tried to write before other than Portland Noir when the story came out? How was it a thing you played around, like, did Gigi the writer and Gigi the mystery lover, had they met before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I came to Tom's class, or when I first met him, and he told me to bring him a piece of writing to show what I did, it was a circus mystery. Yeah. And he read it and he said, "Thank you." Now go home and give me 10 pages of something you don't quite remember, you know. And so, yeah, we did that. I mean, Tom, I think maybe wouldn't have liked this book. I don't know, because he did not like genre books. He did not like stories that were in first person. He did not like stories that were, third person or present tense, like all the things that I do. Just, you know, good gimmicky things that I love. So yeah, he kind of what's this thing you do with the towel? Ring. He wrung that out of me, and then I learned to write for like 20 years, and then I came back to it.
Tom would love this book.
Yeah, he would.
Yes, he would. Tom, okay, so I definitely want to hit on Tom for just a moment. Can you talk about his influence on you? And I'm especially interested, even though I hear what you're saying and I know he said not to write in third, he said like all the things that you just said, and also for every rule he gave us, he would show a time in the book that broke it that he loved.
Yeah.
So can you just talk his influence on you, with the experience of writing it with sort of him on your shoulder, as I feel like a lot of us have sometimes when we're writing? Just where do you want to go with that?
He, I mean, I came to Tom with, I feel like every baby writer comes with like their sort of little special thing that they bring to the table. Like you might be really good at understanding the human condition, or you might be poetic, and you might be really great at describing things, whatever. I think what I brought to the table was a rampant imagination, and that was kind of it. Like, and that was a good thing. But Tom, like, he took that thing in me and wrangled it into shape and turned it into something that actually had skill behind it, you know, and order behind it. Tom always said, Tom, how many people are dangerous writers here? How many people study from Tom? Yeah. I mean, you know, most of you don't need me to tell you what he did, but for anybody who didn't know Tom, you know, he would say, write from your own story, write from the sore place, what you're afraid to touch, which was not something I ever really thought to do. I just wanted to, you know, sort of have fun and write, you know, my sort of horror stories and mystery stories. And so I gave up basically what was natural to me to write, and wrote 2 novels in that class, you know, that were very different and that were based on my life and very much his teaching. And, you know, in the course of that, I learned how to actually write, you know. And so that I feel like once I went back to this book, even though it was not the kind of book that Tom would have ever sort of had in his class, I had learned everything I needed to know, I think, to be able to go back to my roots and do it in a better way, I guess.
So the time from idea to publication was how long then?
Yeah, 2002 until I signed with Forest Avenue Press last September.
There's a lot of writing in
I mean,
there, and it legit takes that long sometimes.
It does. I mean, I wrote the old book, and I don't even know, I don't think I don't have it. It's in some long dead computer. And you know, I probably did that for a couple of years, and then I wrote the other stuff that I wrote with Tom, and then I came back to it in like 2017. And so really, when I really started working on it, and it had this shape and this story, was from then till now.
So cool. Okay, I have a bunch of dorky craft questions ready. Okay, so plot is very important in this book, and it's complicated. I can't help but read as a writer. I try not to, but I can't help it. So I'm reading the book, and I'm like, how on earth do you track the plot? Because I want to talk about narrative distance too, but I'm going to just hold that off. But because we learn what the character learns chapter by chapter, so each chapter we know a little bit more, each chapter we know a little bit more. But the writer has to know everything. So I'm really curious about how were you able to track both the plot of what happened, keeping track of it, now we know this, now we know this, and also be able to hold the whole of the knowing without giving it away. Okay, good.
I probably shouldn't have done it as well as I did. That sounds like bragging, but brag. Because like I did not start writing it with any sense of organization. When I came back in like 2017-ish and started working on this story, I had an idea, and I work in the marketing department, PALS, and the office, where my desk was in the industrial warehouse, and that is just like a little walk down the street from Forest Park. And so on my lunch breaks, I used to walk to Forest Park, walk for like 20 minutes, think through what's going to happen next, what I want, and then walk home, and then 10 minutes I'd write it down every day. And so then I created this like really long, sprawling, unorganized, document of notes. And then once I I figured if it is going to be a mystery, even just a mystery, it's got to be organized, right? Because otherwise it's going to be full of holes. I really like everything else I've ever written, and particularly what I wrote with Tom was done as a pantser, right? Writing by the seat of your pants instead of as a plotter. Because I always liked the process of finding out. And Tom used to say it's like walking through a forest with a machete and cutting it as you go, and that's how you discover where you are. And I couldn't help but start that way, even though I knew I shouldn't, but I got excited. I looked at my notes and I just started sort of writing things. And that could have been dangerous, but then at some point I stopped and I said, okay, I gotta make myself a spreadsheet. So I made a spreadsheet. But yeah, as much as I am I love a spreadsheet. Yeah, I get really excited, and I made it like a calendar because so the book is 14 days, repeating days, and in those days, the same stuff happens for the general public or the general world at the same time along all these, this happens at 1 o'clock, this happens at 2 o'clock, so I had to know not only what was going to happen in the mystery, I had to be able to track what people normally would do, and the gun can change the trajectory of the day, but there's always this base of what always happens. So, I got myself in trouble a couple times where I would be like, yeah, that can't have happened in that period of time, But anyway, spreadsheet. That's my answer.
And the spreadsheet had like time and plot on it?
I had this sprawling, thing of notes, and then I had the spreadsheet that just had the little things that I could refer to. Yeah.
There's all kinds of little hidden gems tucked away in here that are like Easter eggs to the careful reader, and also kind of winking at the genre itself, which I loved to notice and read. Were those fun to write? Like were those just flowing out of you? Or
Yes.
Yes.
That's why I loved writing this, because I got to do all that stuff. I got to play, I got to play. It was so much fun. After, laboring over writing. And I felt like when I got to the end of it, I thought, there's no way this is publishable because it was so much fun.
And yet here we are.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's in third person. I'm going to say something I have no authority to say in front of other people. It makes me feel like the genre there's a distance to mystery, which is, and noir, which is so weird because there's also an intimacy in that tone. How did you manage that? I'm realizing it's kind of real time as I stand here, but there is both. There's like a weird distance if you don't know me, you don't know something, and also like I'm telling you everything, aren't I?
Yeah.
Which is a lot to juggle from my point of view. How did you do that?
I don't know.
Were you conscious of it? Let's start with that.
I don't think I was. I think I made it third person because originally when I wrote the thing back in 2002, it was third person, and I think another book I was really into when I was young was The Stand, Stephen King's The Stand, and all that, that thing where there's all these different stories that are threaded in, and they're all third person. And so anyway, I think that's why I started writing it that way back then, and when I came back, after writing everything in first person, when I decided to pick this up, it just automatically went back to third just because of the way it used to be. And I don't understand omniscient point of view. I don't think I could write in it. I think if I'm going to write in third person, it's going to be close over the shoulder, because that's going to be the closest I can get to doing first person. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing about it is that film noir and old-time radio, which is references that sort of the lens that this book is written through, often is first person. It's she walked into my office, like strutting like a whatever, it's usually like first person past, so it's weird that I didn't do it, but.
It's funny because it feels very intimate, I think, because we know what the narrator knows as they know it. We also know the things they know they don't know, and there's an intimacy in that, and the intimacy is what so often people actually cheat first person for, I feel like. If I just put it in first, it'll be intimate, right? Yeah. But actually you built it without that, which I think is really cool. Yeah. Okay, are we just going on to one? We're good. Can we talk about radio?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Actually, I will, because as an example, what we were just talking about, it made me think that I did, pull a couple of quotes that I could tell you to show you what real old-time radio sounds like and why I love it so much.
Yeah. Bring it on.
And I think it is first person. I'm hoping it's not like the opposite of what I just said. Anyway. So this is why I wanted to write this book this way. This is from a radio show called Pat Novak for Hire. And it's campy, lovely, and amazing. It's also pretty misogynistic, so get rid of that. Earl Hayes didn't answer the door, but you couldn't quarrel with what you got. She was in her 30s and pushing 40 hard enough to bruise it. But she looked good standing there in the doorway, long and lean enough to make a greyhound turn in his card. She was wearing green lounging pajamas, and you've seen bananas in looser skins. You could see the bay behind her through the window, and she stood there brushing back enough red hair to sell to a mattress factory. When she pushed the door back, she started to smile. It gave you a weak feeling where your dinner ought to be. And her voice came right out of the oven. So that was like, how many similes were in that paragraph? So that's one. And that's one of my all-time favorite shows. Anyway, and this is from, just to sort of give you a sense of like a little different tack, this is from The Adventures of Philip Marlowe. One of those thick, chilly fogs that sneaked in from the Pacific and hung vaguely to the street lamps along the Sunset Strip. It was the kind of fog that you could see through, but everything was out of focus. Made you start wondering what you were going to do when you were 90 and all alone. Oh, wow. Right? So fabulous. I love it so much. Yeah, so I got obsessed with old-time radio, I don't know, for a few years, like 5 or so years ago. Specifically old-time radio detective shows and sometimes old-time radio science fiction shows. And I don't know when I decided. So I had this collection of favorite phrases, and I would listen, and I would, oh my God, that's like this. These came from my collection. Oh, gotta write that down. I would write it down, and it started to become this just fabulous collection of cool phrases. And then I started to write notes to myself, like, well, if When the Gun was like this, and it became like notes for the novel. Like it's just kind of, did this and became research. So anyway.
That's so cool. Thanks for reading those. Okay, I have one more question, and then I'm hoping you'll read again. And then we'll turn it over to the audience. That sounds weird. And then we'll open it up to the audience. Yeah. What was the most difficult chapter to write, and why?
I have no idea. I really have no idea. I mean, yeah, it was all, I have no idea.
Let me that's what I'm really curious about. I was trying to be broad. What I'm really curious about is, were the early chapters easier to write because there was less you needed to show how everything fit together, or were the later couple chapters harder to write because there was only a few things you needed to slide into place and they had to fit perfectly?
I think it was easier the farther it went along, because I got a better idea of how the world worked. Creating the time loop, I mean, there are a million time loop stories, right? But mine had its specific way it works, and you know, how does he actually kind of like can turn back himself, but he can't get out of it. Like, what are the rules, right? And it took a long time for me to feel settled in the way it worked. And once I did, it was worse than sailing. I mean, there was more like big question plot stuff, you know.
Yeah.
But I didn't have to tinker with where am I living right now, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Will you read to us again from the back?
Yes.
With some Foley? Foley.
I like your hat, David.
Oh, thank you. Before we do the second, get the microphone, and I do a little bit of setup. That I didn't want to do while you guys were talking, so you can go ahead and talk while I set up.
Okay.
Okay. We talked about that.
It's going to be noisy too, so.
Will you talk about the first sentence, which is actually prologue? Okay.
What? I mean, I guess what? Well, what I can say about the prologue is that actually, your question about what was the hardest part. Here's what the hardest part was trying to figure out how to really adequately introduce the gun with his name in a way that didn't seem like it's a device, but it didn't seem too like gimmicky, and seemed like an authentic thing that I was putting on the page. And I spent a lot of time writing a first chapter, trying to figure out how to sort of introduce him, and I don't remember, how the sort of epiphany happened, but all of a sudden one day I had this idea of starting big, in the world and time and the sky and funneling down, and then, down into this one character, and also doing it with numbers, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and it was one of those moments, actually, as a writer, where I was like, oh, I did something, Yeah. Maybe did that answer any question that you were thinking of?
Yes, that was it. And also, you kind of answered the one question I've been dying to ask, but I didn't get to yet, which is, I often feel like and talk about how the opening sentence, page, and chapter of a book is I call it like an instruction manual for how to read this book, and this is the kind of book you're about to step into. And I feel like that does that, and that's very adept because it's a single sentence. It's a long, complicated sentence, don't get me wrong. Not complicated to read, complicated as a writer. But I feel like it did that, and there was the writer in me was like, okay, that's you did, so I'm guessing that feeling of like I did something is like, it does that, which is a really difficult thing to do as a writer sometimes, is you have to set the tone and feel, and like, this is kind of what it's gonna be. So do you know what I'm talking about?
Very much, yeah, that's exactly why it was exciting to me, because not only was I able to introduce one, the gun, and the name thing, the number thing, which was the thing that I was worrying about, but it also did set the tone, and so that the reader is like, okay, I'll go along with you on this, yeah. Are you ready?
She's gonna. Okay.
Before I read the prologue and then like a little part of the opening to chapter 1, and this is the end of chapter 1. Oh, and I have to set it up a little bit, which I suppose I could have been doing while you were setting up too. Right. So One the Gun has been at the nightclub The Dive Inn, also known as The Dive, interviewing suspects, including the bartender, the widow, the priest, and the doorman, who he calls the Moose. During that time, a piano player was playing the same song over and over, something that to Gunn sounded like a breakneck sea shanty. And he's been trying to tell himself that the fact that today seems suspiciously just like yesterday is simply deja vu. And that's where we pick him up, leaving the dive. Outside, the square is sewn up tighter than a graveyard. Storefronts dark and the streets vacant. The pavement under One the Gun's feet is mottled shadow and dim street lamp amber. It's late. He should have left the dive when he was done with his interview with the bartender, but he stayed around to have a couple more drinks since he's on an expense account from the insurance company. And to chat up a cute little trick with a turned up nose, and yes, that too felt like he'd done before. But at least for however many times he did do it, it was pleasant. Now he's tired. What was it the Moose said when he interviewed him earlier? His egg is fried. Now there's a sound he's not sure he really hears. Like just the thought of a sound. Footsteps? When all this started, the deja vu was a curiosity, but here in the dark of night, it feels eerie. Like it's leading him somewhere he doesn't want to go. The sound of footsteps again. Like he's being followed. He swings a look behind him but sees no one. It's hard to tell in the night's dimness. He keeps walking. The crazy repeating sea shanty is still in his head. They say sailors at sea for extended periods of time can experience hallucinations brought on by the endless tip and roll of the boat, the unfathomable stretch of the water, loneliness. One the Gun has read that sailors in heightened states dream about mermaids and sea serpents. Do they ever dream about deja vu? Could a man alone on an endless sea find the day folding back on itself so that everything he saw, everything he said, everything he heard? That sound of footsteps again. The thrum of warning creeps along his spine. He should have a gun to match his name. Maybe if he were more than a third-rate gumshoe, he would. He turns back, tries to peer down the block. Dark shapes and shadows. There are too many nooks and crevices along the street, recessed doorways, alleys to duck into. In a flash, under street lamp gold, the cat with a black coat and one white ear. The cat with a black coat and one white ear scurries out from an alley and across the sidewalk, a tiny figure bounding through the empty street and to the other side, where it keeps going, off toward the monument of a man on a leaping horse that stands in the very center of the square. One the Gun comes to his office building, goes inside, takes the elevator up to the 6th floor. All down the hallway, the office doors are closed, the glass dark. He's always the only one here late at night. The dictation machine hums. One the Gun sits at his desk and recites all the details of the day, all his passing theories. Everything that comes out of his mouth is something he remembers saying just as he says it. He wonders how many drinks he had at the dive because he's starting to think he's not having deja vu anymore. He's starting to think, no, I did do all this before. I did say all this before. Today is yesterday, and yesterday today. He pulls a half-empty bottle of scotch from the middle desk drawer and swigs. He's sure of it now. Everything he's saying right now, he said last night. He tries to say something different into the horn of the dictation machine, something out of the blue, but his mouth won't obey. He just keeps saying the things he said last night. Like the closer he gets to the end of this day, the harder it is to pull away from it. Now the lights go out. Thick black before his eyes. That warning feeling spreads across his shoulders. He's up, feeling for his flashlight in this damn old building. Moonglow angles down through the window blinds to make stripes on the floor. He fumbles along the worn spines of books on the bookcase behind the desk until his hand finds the cold metal of the flashlight. Switches it on. A beam of light cuts the dark. He hopes the batteries are new enough for him to make it down to the fuse boxes in the basement. He'll have to take the stairs. But no, what is he thinking? He took the stairs last night. He went down into the basement last night. Stop, this is all wrong. He knows what happened last night. But his hand twists the doorknob, and he walks out into the black hall, closes the door behind him. No, he can't go to the basement. The flashlight beam runs shadows up along the dark corridor walls. He can't go to the basement. His feet won't stop walking. He squeezes his eyes shut. He fights to reach down into himself, to rip himself away from the forward flow of time. Stop, stop, please stop. The bells are chiming as he opens his eyes. It's bright as day in the room. He's back in his office. Dizzied by the blast of light, by the sudden halt in his walking, by the impossibility of it all, One the Gun shuts his eyes again, tries to steady himself, listens to another strike of the bell. The chiming that seems like it should mean midnight, but these 12 chimes mean noon. He opens his eyes. The room stops spinning. To the True Blue is standing in front of him. Such a look on her face, eyes the color and size of oceans. He sputters out the only thing he can think to say. Miss Blue?
This is just wonderful. Okay, questions? Wow.
Yeah.
Hello, please.
You look like somebody like when you were a kid and with your friends, you made like little towns or something like that. That kind of creativity seems to be what is popping in my head right now. But my question to you is twofold. Like, how long between 2002 and 2017 did you think about this? And I'm a really big reader, but I don't read fiction, I don't read mystery, I don't read anything, I just read historical novels, or historical biographies. So what would you tell me as the author, what is the most important thing that I should know when I go home and start reading my books?
Okay, did you hear that? One, she built small towns as a child. What do you need to take with you in terms as an author?
No, as a reader, I don't
reader.
read fiction or mystery, I just read biographies, historical biographies, and I read them every night before I go to bed. So I'm now turning to a new genre.
Okay.
What, as an author, would you tell somebody to keep present in mind who's never read a mystery book?
What shall someone who's never read a mystery keep in mind as they set out reading their first mystery?
David. I don't know. I mean, if it's basically about how you can enjoy it as a reader who's not into this type of writing. I don't know, because, I mean, this is very, like, okay, I'm trying to think of ways for this to sort of brush up against nonfiction, and it really doesn't do that very well, but, I mean, it's, you do get a sense of, like, what the world was like in the 40s and 50s America, even though this takes place in a place where people's names are numbers, but it's still basically that time period. And so I think you can enjoy it from the standpoint of getting the vibe of that time period, and also the way people were at that time, because it goes a little beyond just telling the story about a murder mystery. It gets into things like the way women were treated back then, the way people thought of as what they thought heroes should be, and which very much I think is something we are coming back to these days. So I think you could go into it using what Tom Spanbauer would say, which is that fiction is the lie that tells the truth truer. And that's what I challenge you to do when you read my book. And I did have a little town when I was a kid. It was called Little Town.
Hey.
Yes, ma'am, thank you, yes.
Congratulations on your book. And my question is, you mentioned that you have a full-time day job, which sounds like a pretty busy day job, working for PALS, and yet you wrote this book. So what advice do you have for writers who work full-time? Do you write every day at a certain time of day, or how do you stay motivated?
The question is, what advice do you have for writers who also have full-time jobs in order to continue to write their books?
Don't have children.
Seriously. Everything got really out.
I never had a like disciplined, I never wrote at a certain time, and sometimes I would write, sometimes I wouldn't write, so I'm probably not the best to answer that question, but I mean, what happened for me is that I just love it so much and I can't not do it, when, I work and I get off the clock, and luckily my husband he's in his studio making beautiful paintings, and I can do my writing, and then we can meet up at 9:30 and watch a movie. So yeah, just nonstop, like this is all I wanted to do. It's either writing or doing design work, which is anything creative. So just be very needy, I guess. Be very needy in your creativity, and you'll come up with something.
Okay, like waving hand, way back there, pink mask. Yeah, okay. Gigi,
as a book designer, and I'm always a big fan of big numbers. I'm curious, at what point did you know what you wanted for your own work?
Gigi's also a book designer, so as a book designer, how did she know what she wanted for her own book and the book cover design?
And I think it's like when, right? When decide. I mean, I think that was sort of in my head a lot of the time that I wouldn't have thought I'd get a chance to make my own book ever, and I got very lucky there. But I probably somewhere in the middle of working on maybe the first drafting, the idea of a dead or almost dead body lying across what is probably a clock presented itself to me. I think it was pretty. This was a pretty easy one to come up with an idea for. Sometimes it's hard to make a concept for a cover, but this pretty much sort of wrote itself.
So Gigi, you mentioned Robert Hill.
Yeah.
And he is famous for the long sentence. And I wondered how much influence that had on your life.
The question is about writer Robert Hill, who's famous for very long sentences, especially one book that is one whole sentence. And I was wondering the same thing about the first sentence, actually, if that was an homage to Robert, but that's a separate question. And how big an influence he was on you and this book.
I'd say a lot. I mean, I don't know that I thought about length of sentence like that, but Robert's imagination was so big and so rampant, you know, and I loved it so much. And he also, his book, The Remnants, actually when I sent my very long bullet-pointed pitch to Laura, when I wanted to pitch the book for her, I said, I think it's a Forest Avenue Press book because I think it could go hand in hand with The Remnants. Because it, you know, he created, you should all read that book. He created a world that was like ours but different, and people who were like our people but different, and the whole thing was like a rampant runaway train of a romp, hilarious, and underneath there was all this real stuff. And I loved it for that, and I really hoped that I could do that same thing with One the Gun.
You have 5 minutes.
We have time for one more? Is that okay? Okay, one more. This is a lot of pressure. Over there in the back. Yes, with the hat. You're the winner.
I think Gigi's the winner.
Gigi's the winner. You can ride her coattails. What do you got?
800-pound gorilla of creativity. So talking about getting to like the good stuff and the real stuff, it seems like there's a lot of pastiche and like homage, a lot of like callbacks to things that, you know, I also clearly love. The same thing, you know, a lot of noir. When do you lean into things that are like homage, or things that like are like a package? And when do you like kind of clear away from the noir, or clear away from the things that you're using to evoke a feeling or emotion to like do something, you know, different than those callbacks or that emotion that you're, or the vibe that you're going for?
As a writer, how do you lean into the moments that need pastiche and homage, and how do you know when to lean away from them and do the work of plot craft?
Is that fair? Is that okay? It was really hard to summarize.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question. A lot of this book was written just out of my subconscious. Like I don't think I ever thought about that. And I know that, I mean, basically I wanted why I started writing it was because I really wanted to do that and lean into these, this genre and sort of write it for all it's worth. And I think I mostly did that. I guess, you know, the plot told me when it wanted me to pull back and be serious. And when it did, I, you know, pulled back and, you know, but I still couldn't help but toss, you know, references in there throughout. But it definitely, and, you know, as you got closer to the end is when things, you know, at first you're playing, it's a whole, for me, it's a whole fun game, and then it starts to get serious, and the plot just sort of, yeah, the plot told me when it was ready for me to be, to step back. But hold on, I held on. I hope that answered your question.
Gigi, congratulations.
Thanks, Gigi. Thanks.